It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. This is the C Block, the Charlie Block. Today's date is April 28th. It's a Monday, and we start the C Block right around 7:40. John, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me Friday, which was a real eye-opener for me. You know, I am a big proponent of radio, and I promote radio whenever I can. And recently, there's been a bunch of changes in the radio business, where station, which is down in the Southplex, we'll call it down there, KBDZ, interesting station. They've made a lot of waves because they're got a lot of ex-KC people, and they're playing a lot of good rock and roll. They recently leased a station that covers the Westplex, 101.7. So now you can hear them on 93.1. Their station had a decent signal, like in Jefferson County and South City, South St. Louis, but you really couldn't hear it in St. Charles County. So they leased this new station. And I remember last week I put up a thing on my Facebook page. I know you don't look at Facebook, but I put it up on my Facebook page about, saying, hey, look at this. Let's support local radio. These guys are local and great. Remember that, John?
And yeah, I do remember that. And Brad, I saw it on Twitter, and I actually went, after I saw it on Twitter, I went to your Facebook and saw your Facebook post on it too. And I want to say real quick, Brad, that when I saw that, I thought that was really magnanimous of you, and it underscores what you do by your actions. You don't just say, oh, promote local radio. You're actually doing something to promote local radio. Go ahead, Brad.
I've talked about it too many times in the show, and John, you could get tired of me saying, is the fact that what we need to do is, instead of being enemies, instead of looking at other radio stations as competitors, and I say this time and time again, I don't view other radio stations as competitors. I view Alphabet, which is Google, and I view Meta, which is Facebook, and Instagram, and WhatsApp.
And Netflix, don't forget
Netflix, and all the other digital platforms. Those are our true competitors, and the radio business should come together and promote each other, cross-promote. Well, I am happy to report that I heard from Kevin Russell, the general manager of Don Z Communications, which is the licensee of KBDZ, and he was super nice to me. He complimented me on what I was doing, felt that I was really, really, really making a difference in the radio business, and was very, very happy the fact that I'm complimenting the fact that he is now broadcasting to the Westplex. And interestingly enough, we have two stations that has Westplex in their name. We have Westplex 107.1, which is our music station. We have this station, which is KSLQ. And by the way, he told me he loves to listen to you and I on KSLQ. He's been a big fan of KSLQ for years and years and years. And he just couldn't say enough nice things.
I know. And then we have the Wayne's World. Michael Myers' voice comes in and says, what, Brad?
He did. He said.
Oh, I thought you were setting up for a 1990s not.
No. It was.
So I don't talk about things that you and I talk about or text about off air. I didn't see the end of the story. So the story ended well then, right?
Oh, he couldn't. See, my whole thing is radio stations carp back and forth at each other. Like you made a comment about Diane Jones. Okay. The interesting thing is, so far in this show right now, we've talked about 3 or 4 other different radio stations. On other stations, if I were to mention the call letters of another station, that would be immediate dismissal. You'd be fired. If you were on,
of course you would. You don't promote other stations. That's the way that it goes, right, Brad?
If Mark Cox on 97.1 say, well, over on Tracy's station this morning, you got Dan Strauss, and boy, Dan's a great guy. He'd be gone. And matter of fact, back in the day, when Robert Hyland ran KMOX with an iron fist, if you were seen in the same restaurant if you were an employee of KMOX, and if you were seen in the same restaurant with an employee of another radio station, that was grounds for dismissal. Even if they were just waiting tables, because radio doesn't cut it.
Now, Brad, how did the story come about where you ended up speaking with Mr. Russell?
He called me because he sent me a nice little text. Said, Brad,
he sent you a text and you responded and said, call me, right?
Yeah, no, he sent me a text. And see, once again, I now conform to the John Combest School of Communication Ethics or Protocol, where you can't just call somebody in the phone. You have to text them first. And I essentially said, hey, call me, and I gave him my phone number. Well, he had my phone number already because he texted me. So we had a great conversation, and he was very complimentary of what we're doing. Like I said, he was like a huge fan of KSOQ, remembers from the old days, and was very complimentary of what they're doing, stuff like that, and told me he couldn't be happier about, and he said this is the interesting thing. He told me he got several people that responded, that called him because of the fact, hey, I saw this really nice post on Brad Hildebrand's Facebook page complimenting you and telling you about how we should do business with local business. So that's part of the reason that drew his attention to the fact, and he went and looked at it on Facebook, and he thought, man, this Brad's a nice guy. So that's how the whole thing started. So now he's, I don't want to say a fanboy, but I would say that he's like in our camp, and he's, I don't want to say he's drank the Kool-Aid or drunk the Kool-Aid, however you say that. But, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they're running promos on KBDZ. If Randy Raley right now, I would be surprised if he's not saying, hey, you can listen to classic rock here on KBDZ 93.1 or 101.7, or you can listen to Brad and John on 104.5. Well, you take the pick. I got a feeling that's what Randy Raley's saying right now. What do you think, John?
I think you're joking about that. I think that's your exaggeration part of the story. And over the weekend, Brad, so I learned, of course, about KBDZ through you, and I set it as one of my presets last week. And as I was driving, I was listening to it over the weekend when I was in the car. And I thought of you, Brad, because I didn't know that the story ended well, because the last update that I had, it didn't look so great. And I remember thinking, it's such a shame that I like this station, but I know they don't treat other, people that run other radio stations, namely Brad. I know they don't treat people like with the utmost respect. I didn't know that the story had a happy ending.
Oh my God, John, happy ending. Come on, it's all butterflies and daisies, with dogs running around in the meadow, stuff like that. And by the way, interesting thing, you've never listened to the station before. So in other words, I've turned a new listener onto their station. Is that what you're telling me? So I saw a Post-Dispatch piece that mentioned them, months ago, but I wasn't going to actually listen to it and set it as a preset. But then you talked about it. I saw your post about it. And I'm like, oh, half of the music they play I'm probably not into, but the later half I am. Well, and it's a preset that I listen to in the car now. Remember, the interesting thing was that the thing I mentioned to you was that, and I put, this essentially it's like a page out of their sales book or something like that. Is there, like their handout. It was very well written. Talked about, because remember I talked about last week, you always criticizing boomers, talked about boomers have all the money, boomers do this, boomers do that. And John's going like, well, boomers are terrible. They're terrible people.
Yeah, I don't say they're terrible. I say that they should not check out in the checkout line in front of me. That's all, Brad.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, Shedeur Sanders. How do you say that? Is it Shedeur? Is it?
Yeah, let's go with Shedeur. So I haven't followed this much, but there's a huge controversy around him in the NFL draft, right? You probably know more about this than I do, Brad.
I'm not a sports guy, but if you know the story with this, Shedeur Sanders, however you pronounce his name, is Deion Sanders' son, who played for him at Jackson State when Deion went to Colorado. He came along, and he is a very talented quarterback. And the NFL draft was last week, started, Thursday or Friday or something like that, which has turned into this big deal. You go back 50 years and the NFL draft was like in a hotel room at Holiday Inn or something like that. Now it's like in a stadium. There's thousands of people there, and it's orchestrated the whole bit. He was essentially picked, or like the experts thought he would go first round for sure, possibly number one pick. And if you know the whole deal, the way this works is that you have all these people, all these college athletes who declare their eligibility for the NFL draft. And then they have this big thing, and the pick is always the number one pick. They have first round and they have second round, and the teams go through. So he doesn't get picked number one in the first round. And they go through the entire first round. He doesn't get picked. They go through the second round. No pick. Third round. No pick. Fourth round. No pick. Fifth round. He finally gets picked. Now there's this huge hubbub. Would hubbub be a good word to say, John?
Yeah, that'd be a great word. Yeah, or even brouhaha.
Brouhaha about the fact that, and especially, here we go, the racial component, they didn't take him because he's a black man.
Yeah, sports definitely discriminates against black men in football. You know that, right?
Especially the NFL. There's what?
Especially NFL and NBA.
There's two black dudes in the NFL. The rest are all whiteys, right? Okay. They didn't take him because he's a black man. He wears gold chains around his neck, and he talks like a rapper. And I'm thinking to myself, what? Come on. And I'm thinking to myself, are they really being for real on this? So everybody's going like, this is horrible. Now, he won all these awards, and people are going like, well, he was the number one quarterback in the Pac-12. The crazy thing for me is the Big Ten now has 22 teams, and the the Big 12 has 46 teams, and the Pac West has 3 teams or something like that. I mean, I don't even get this whole conference thing anymore. You have to listen to a station that talks about this all the time, not our station. But why do you think? Do you think it was because he was a black dude that is the son of Deion Sanders? Because some people are saying, well, you know what's going to happen? The reason that if he gets picked by one of the teams is that if he gets picked by that team, then Deion Sanders is going to say, hey, I need to coach my son at the NFL level. Fire that guy who's the coach of that team he goes for, and I'm the new coach, and I'm going to be the general manager of the team as well too. What's your read on this, John?
Yeah, here's what I think. So I've been persuaded, and maybe my initial bias has been confirmed by a gentleman named TJ Moe. He used to play for Mizzou. He's got a huge following on social media. On Twitter/X, you can follow him at TJMo28. Just a real quick quote from him, Brad, that he posted yesterday is, when they say white America just can't handle a confident black man, ignoring the fact that 70% of the NFL and the vast majority of the first round that was just drafted are, quote, confident black men. And most people like all of them just fine. It's all absurd. When they call you racist, laugh in their face like they deserve. So TJ Moe, over the last, I'd say 5 days, has posted a number of clips of Shedeur Sanders after games, taunting opponents, creating drama, acting essentially like a diva. That's the word that TJ Moe uses. And Moe's point is, look, all things being equal, you're going to take somebody who's an outstanding player with no drama over an outstanding player with a lot of drama. And to chalk it up to racism is just so lazy, and it's just so typical. So I agree with TJ Moe. And again, it's probably a little confirmation bias because I've seen this over the decades as well. But Brad, you also bring up a good point, which is, do you want to have the possibility of Deion Sanders for 16 weeks minimum critiquing your front office, your coaches from the sidelines? And by the sidelines, I mean on social media, et cetera. Do you want to invite that circus into your organization? And the Cleveland Browns, said, yes, we're willing to take that risk, and it might pay off for him.
Well, and there's also some interesting things. Apparently, Deion made a quote years ago that if he ever got picked by the Browns, he would drop out of football or something like that. Now his son ends up with the Browns. I see. The interesting thing about it is you bring up an interesting point there about, what did you say, 70% of the NFL is black.
Yeah, and that was TJ Moe's point, yeah.
And perfect example. Look how racially biased the Grammys were. We just had the Grammys, whereas it was all white people that won. Oh, hold it now. Let me think about that. It was all,
yeah, it was not. It was not. And you don't see a lot of white people going on TV protesting and saying they're going to boycott next year because there weren't enough white people winning awards.
It was all black people that won the awards, including Beyonce, who won the Country Music Award. Wasn't that the way it went this year?
Yeah, it sure was. And, this just goes back to, so if you look at the Sanders thing, and by the way, I personally am biased toward Deion Sanders. I think he's entertaining. I think certainly a large number of people who criticize him, or a large percentage of people who criticize him, just don't like his personality, and that's fine. Like, I see why he rubs people the wrong way. I tend to be biased toward him because I think he's entertaining, and I loved him at Florida State. But you could compare this too, Brad, to the situation going on with Shannon Sharp, the sexual harassment / SA allegations against him. If you're any strong type of personality in media at the highest levels, whether you're Deion Sanders or you're Shannon Sharp, there's going to be people who criticize you no matter what. There's going to be people who ardently defend you no matter what. And so media personalities are going to feel one way or another about you, Well,
to a certain degree, your background of being hold on, I can clear my voice here. Your background of being a wrestling fan, to a certain extent, isn't that what, if you picked up Shedeur Sanders and you had his dad show up at games and, like you said, comment on various things, isn't that a positive? I mean, and probably. But what if? I mean, you could do a million what ifs here.
But what if it actually becomes a real distraction for your front office or for your coaches or whoever, And maybe, humans are humans, Brad. And there's a chance that if you had Deion Sanders launching a major national boycott of your team because your son's not getting playing time, I mean, that could affect ticket sales. That could have real money implications.
Let's bring it back local. And I will tell you this right now. I say the biggest mistake that our local leaders are doing is not get the Kansas City Chiefs here in St. Louis. Bring them here to St. Louis. And then, and let's say take what is city of St. Louis still has what, a half $500 million if you count the ARPA funds and
something about that. Let's call it a half billion.
And the Stan Kroenke money, they got a $500 million. They got $500 million. Okay, so you bring the Chiefs to St. Louis, and then you say, okay, we want the Chiefs in St. Louis. Throw out that stupid Andy Reid. He's proven that he's not very good a coach. Put in Deion Sanders as the head coach. Put in Shedeur Sanders. We get rid of that Patrick Mahomes guy. I think his days are numbered. The last Super Bowl he didn't win, so we don't need him anymore. Put in Shedeur Sanders as the quarterback, and we make the headlines in the entire country. And nobody would be talking about St. Louis as being the murder capital anymore. People go like, oh my God, look what those St. Louisans did. They put their money where their mouth is. They brought a team that was going to move to Kansas, moved them across the state, fired that crazy bad coach Andy Reid, got rid of that terrible Patrick Mahomes, put in Deion Sanders as head coach, put his son as the quarterback. Man, you talk about the ESPN guys would have to take up residence here in St. Louis to cover that story. Don't you think?
I think they will triple the size of the Family Arena, name the team after the new St. Charles County executive, call them the Eluminators. The St. Charles County Eluminators.
Eluminators. They wouldn't call them the St. Louis County Lawless, or they wouldn't call them
be the Lawless.
The Philadelphia or the St. Louis Eagles instead of there would be the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think we'd have to go with Bill for that. I think at some point we'd have to go with Bill.
The St. Louis Eagles. Okay, John, we've done enough damage for today, and thanks again to Kevin Russell, the general manager of KBDZ. You are a gentleman and a scholar, and I do appreciate you. Talk to you tomorrow, John.
See you tomorrow.